tell you, last time we made some waves when you were on here, but we have some comments flying in here from Jacob Cole. He says, finally, Josh Pate has come back to AYS in the Rock voice. What's up, my man? How are you?
I'm good. I don't know what just happened, but just as I was ready to pour my heart out and let you know how happy I am to be back, everything went. So I don't know. I mean, is that an omen? I don't know how to interpret that. I don't know how technology works.
Well, look, I don't know either. We've had so many issues since the hurricane, but nevertheless, you're here. We're going to talk about a lot of great things. For the future college football commissioner is in the building. Josh, I got to tell you, dude, I love listening to you, things that you put out about things you would change around college football. And I think it's a great conversation starter. But one thing's, even when you say that and we bring it into this studio, we bring it into this show and we talk about it, for you, if I gave you a crystal ball, if I gave you one wish, one thing that you could change around college football, to you, what would that be?
Things that I realistically think we could do right now. I'd really love to fix the calendar. So it's two parts, but it's the same thing. I would love to fix college football's calendar where there's a lot more clearly defined structure to it. And I think the pro game gets this right. And I don't think the college game gets this right now. Thank you, Mick, by the way. I don't think that there's any excuse for us to just randomly announce schedules 10 years ahead of time. I think there's no excuse why that is not owned as an event. Here's how I'd love to see that. I'd love to see right now in the SEC, I'd love to see right before LSU starts spring practice and Bama starts spring practice, I'd love to see a special on SEC Network, primetime event where that year's conference schedule is announced. There's no need for you to know who you're playing 4 years ahead of time. So I'd love to do that, but that's mainly, from, let's say, a content and marketing standpoint. From the actual on the field game, we got to clean December up, man. December is a minefield right now. And I don't know that I've spoken to a single coach or administrator, for that matter, who is happy with the way the early signing period overlaps with, you just saw it because you guys just went through it down there. And it's a mess. No one likes it, okay? So then the follow-up question is, well, if no one likes it, why are we not changing it? Well, the follow-up to that is, well, we got a bunch of different proposals. We haven't really agreed upon one. But I'll tell you the one I've kind of been attracted to is I like that early signing date. If you're going to have one for me, I really like it being in summer. Now, not only does that get it out of the way, and that achieves a bunch of obvious results, but I'll tell you what else it does. It really makes you step to the table when it comes to giving committable offers to kids. Right. You better be really sure if you're giving one of those 25 or so scholarships you got per cycle to a kid who hasn't played his senior year yet, you better be really sure about it. So I think what the net result would be there is the sure things, the surefire stud 5-star caliber guys would still get their offers. And if they want to, they can still commit before their senior year. Of course, you can get out of that thing if your coach gets fired. I don't think we need to even waste time on that. But I think that would, for me selfishly, it would save the February signing day, but also it would just alleviate so much of this crap that is in December right now that really we have the ability to get out of. We have created that. It's not like nature has thrust the December problem upon us. College football has.
Right. And for a guy like Brian Kelly, and this isn't an excuse, but if he does want to go to LSU, Josh, he doesn't have a choice. Like, he's going to leave his team behind. If he wants to make that leap, what does he do? And I agree with you. I think that is one of, if not the biggest concern. And I do have to ask, though, because Rick brings this up, too, about NIL and transfer portal. Do you think that what you just said can alleviate some of that stuff, too? And I don't know how it will alleviate the transfer portal, but at least – I don't know, Josh. Maybe it changes things when you know who your guy's coming in, but I don't know what really there is to do other than doing some regulations on the portal. But what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll tell you what I'd love. I would love for there to have been some structure before we went down this road, but we're already down the road now. Each of those roads, NIL and portal, are their own separate roads. But now that we're down those roads, listen, a lot of this still falls into conferences' laps. I'm not one to look at like a lot of people look at the government to save them from all their problems, and a lot of people in college look at the NCAA to save them from all the problems. Right. I like to look at the conference level because the conference level is really where you get stuff done. And to me, that's disproportionately where a lot more of the power lies in college athletics. Now, it's not in Indianapolis. It's in Birmingham, you know, if you're an SEC fan. So what I'd love to do, or what I'd love to see, I guess, is understanding what the portal is, and understanding that there has to be a mechanism in here. There has to be windows, in other words. Pretty much everyone agrees on that. And look, to be honest with you, I don't know that you'd get the kind of volume of pushback that people are scared that get on that. A lot of people are terrified to do anything right now in the way of pushing back on portal or NIL because they're afraid of lawsuits. And I think on the NIL front, you absolutely do have reason to be scared about that. But when it comes to the portal, man, what's the real threat we're running here from just saying, look, we're still going to have this thing, but let's be reasonable. There are going to be windows. And one of those windows is not week 5 of the regular season. Like, you're pretty much locked into a team. I know that's a wild concept, but once you decide to play for a football team in a given year, that's pretty much it. You're going to be on the football team for that given year. And if you want to throw up the deuces afterwards or before, that's okay. But I mean, there got to be, that is very reasonable. There's nothing radical about that.
Right. And you know what's crazy, Josh, is you have teams like LSU, and we'll use Mir. I don't think LSU is going to be the only team in a bowl game with only 37 scholarship players.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that's going to be something that you're going to continue to see when coaches leave and things like that. Like, what would Notre Dame have ultimately been if Marcus Freeman wouldn't have been there? You know, those are questions that I always ask. Josh Pate from 247 is our guest. Fire inside your questions right now. I do love Josh, and it's something that we talked about because Mike Jones Jr., who is a current linebacker for LSU, joins us every Thursday. And we asked him the same question the day that you posted your video about, you know, hey, I'm driving back to Mobile after an LSU game in Death Valley, and I finally get my hearing back. And he talks about the same thing. He goes, man, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. I finally could hear, you know, after the Auburn game this year. For LSU fans, and I know that they hear this a lot, but for you, maybe not someone growing up in that atmosphere necessarily, when it was your first experience and be there, was it the most electric that you had been, like from a stadium, from a college perspective?
Yeah, so I'm the most blessed out of anyone because the first time I'm normally at these stadiums because of what my job allows me to do, it's always big games. I don't go to LSU and see them play McNeese for the first time. I'm down there. I think it was Bama. I think it was a night game against Alabama. Saban's in there. It's the first game I've ever seen in Tiger Stadium. So I started at the 10th rung on the ladder. And I started at the very pinnacle of what atmosphere in Death Valley is like. And, you know, I had heard all the stories about that place just like everyone else. And, you know, I've been around the block a time or two in this conference now and nationally. Very blessed to be able to do that. Never take that for granted. But I don't know that there's another place in America. And I say this very complimentary. I think you and I talked about this last time. I don't know of any place you feel more uncomfortable and really, if you want to remove the filter, kind of unsafe if you're not wearing purple and gold than at LSU. And again, that's a great thing. If you're a college football fan, that's what you want to hear people say. And it's not that, you know, you take a crowbar to the shin. It's not a Nancy Kerrigan situation per se, but you're just, you're walking through and you realize, I would hate to be an opposing fan here. And I certainly remember watching Bama's bus come in there and that thing rocking back and forth and just thinking to myself, it is so amazing that such pent-up rage exists. Healthy, but pent-up rage exists like this. And then it just pours out. And I remember that night, it had to be, I don't know which year it was. It was a few years back. Jalen Hurts was still there to give you a time of reference. But I remember taking video on the sideline. And normally, if you want to get loud video, you take that video on the first defensive series when the opposition takes the field, because that's when that stadium's going to be full throw. It didn't really matter that night. You just shoot it 2nd and 10, midway through the second quarter, you know, 3rd and 7, late third quarter. It didn't matter. You just shoot video anytime. And I kept on sending it back home. And everyone, that was when Apple had first come out with the mind blown emoji. Oh, and people kept sending me the mind blown emoji, partly because they wanted to try it out, because not much happens in Columbus, Georgia to blow your mind. So a lot of folks that I knew back home wanted to try that thing out. And that's what I kept getting, the mind blown emoji. So yeah. And then this year I went to Penn State when they played Auburn. And that's 110,000 people. It was the whiteout game. Now, what I respected about them and where they have the market cornered is the atmosphere. It's rabid, you know, it's loud too, but it's different in that I've never seen choreography. I've never seen a collectiveness. I've never seen a kind of an all-in mentality of everyone participating, everything from like chants to there's just so much in-stadium activity. in a Penn State game. But as for just pure, like, guttural, and should I say exuberance? Yes, of emotion, nothing like it. Nothing like Tiger Stadium Saturday night.
LSU fans are too drunk to be coordinated. Just letting you know they're not going to be that. You know, it's interesting you brought up there, and that's just transitioning that into Brian Kelly. And I know that you've talked about this, and we've obviously talked about this a lot. Do you think that he's ready? You know, because you talk about your first experience, and I know that he hears it a lot. But I mean, Josh, if there's a 3rd and 1 against Alabama on the 20-yard line, is he ready? You know, and I don't mean that. And look, he's an experienced coach, but man, I mean, like, do we underestimate him, or is he really ready for that? And I think that he is, but there's some big shoes to fill when you're on there 3rd and 1 against Alabama.
You know, the guys that I think will be even more impacted are the assistants that have not coached in the SEC that he brought with him. See, Brian Kelly, if you're a head coach, your mind is in such a place that I truly believe you could be standing next to a real jet engine, and you're so zoned in, and you got that double ear headset on that maybe it doesn't impact you like it would a normal human being just being placed on that sideline. But some of those assistant coaches that have a minute or two to breathe between series, when they experience that stuff for the first time, I was talking to one of them down there recently. I said, do you understand what this place is like? And then I pulled a shh. No, you don't understand what it's like. But don't worry, you will soon understand what it's like. I think that's, to be honest with you, if you're negotiating against another university in another conference and you're LSU and you're talking to a defensive line coach or an offensive line coach, whatever the case may be, and it's 50-50, this kind of stuff literally can be the deciding factor.
Right.
Just thinking to yourself, okay, everything else is equal. Salaries equal, opportunities equal. I can elevate here, I can elevate there. But man, that place on Saturday night, I've heard so many things about that. And you know, we got 30,000 empty seats in this place I'm coaching right now. Like, think about how big a trump card that is in your back pocket just because of what the fan base gives you every Saturday.
Right. And kicking that around. And look, I'm going to give Brian a little bit of leeway. I mean, look, you're 11-11, and some LSU fans think that they can get to 10 wins. Now, they have the talent, Keyshawn Boutte, Mason Smith, and others. But look, let's calm down. Let's see. Of the coaches that are coming in, though, is there anybody that maybe outside of Brian Kelly that you're really looking at, not just in the SEC, but maybe even just new head coaches around the country? I know Lincoln's at USC, but is he maybe the biggest, you know, let's see what he can do with this team now? I mean, Billy Napier, a local guy going to Florida. But who are you wanting to see most at their new coaching or new position, or head coaching position, I should say?
Yeah, it's a little bit off the radar because I was thinking about this yesterday. All the names you just mentioned, I mean, we could do an hour on each one of them. All of them are technically right answers. But I'll tell you one that fascinates me a little bit is Brent Venables at Oklahoma.
Okay.
And I'll give you a couple of reasons why. The first is I've always been of the opinion that if I had a major head coaching job, I would never give it to a guy who's never been a head coach before. You can point me to Kirby and you can point me to Ryan Day. I know it's worked out sometimes. It's just my personal philosophy. If I am the caliber of Georgia or Ohio State or LSU or Oklahoma, I have elevated myself to such a position that I don't have to take chances like that. That's the way I look at it, but it's worked out. It's just a philosophy. But with Brent Venables, so he's coming in now. Now, I think that what I just said is on steroids even more 2020 and moving forward because of the new eras we're in. So it used to be that you already had a plate full of everything under the sun if you're going to be a head coach for the first time. But now you've also got to understand NIL, which has nothing to do with football, dude. That has nothing whatsoever to do with football. You did not learn that at Grand Valley State or Tulsa or wherever you were coming up. I mean, think about marketing, brand appeal, market saturation. Think about all those things that you've never drawn up on a grease board in your life. Not only do you have to understand it, you've got to understand how to coordinate and navigate through that world and lead, not just be a part of it. You're not third row in the classroom. You're having to lead that. That also understanding that you have to have an entire different sector inside your personnel department that has to do with college scouting, which you never had to have until a few years ago, because you never had to scout college players until a few years ago, because the portal didn't really exist as it does now until a few years ago. My point is all this is new. So even the longtime head coaches are having to evolve on this stuff. You've never been a head coach before, and you're having to come into a situation where you got to learn all of what you used to have to know, and then 20% extra, and then you add this on top of that. I was talking about recruiting in Southern California and Florida and Texas on last night's show. And the stat for Texas is not as bad as the other two. About 50% of the in-state kids, 4- and 5-star caliber from Texas, have left over the past 8 years. It's way worse in Florida and Cali. It's like 60% in each state. Well, a lot of those kids were going to Oklahoma. That's how Lincoln Riley won the way he did at Oklahoma. He had a lot of talent from Texas, had some California too. Right. I'm very curious if Brent Venables is going to be able to attack the state of Texas with Jimbo and Steve Sarkisian and the NIL infrastructure that exists in Texas now. Because, look, I just threw a whole lot at you. I just threw having to understand all this new stuff and having to make your way in a very treacherous recruiting minefield that does not reside in your home state. And I've never seen you coach before at the head coaching level. So, I mean, I know they're excited about him, and they would tell you, we got our Sam Pittman. We got the guy who feels uniquely like Oklahoma. And for their sake, I hope they do. It's not like I'm rooting against Oklahoma, but I've seen Napier coach. I've seen Riley coach. Right. I have never seen Brent Venables in a head coaching position.
And Josh, quite honestly, you just said that in 4 minutes, right? Like all that compacted into one thing. And you don't, I mean, I agree with you. I wonder how he's going to unpack that. And look, even Brian Kelly and his first and Billy Napier and watching what A&M's doing. Let me stay there with Oklahoma and Texas coming into the SEC. What do you think that's going to even be like? Now you talk about Brent Venables and all that he has to do, but now both of those programs coming to the SEC, who knows exactly when they're coming. I'm sure you might have a good guess, maybe better than I do, but I mean, even that, the SEC is just going to be so far ahead of so many other conferences. And do you think that might be a reason why we didn't get a playoff expansion too, of some of these alignments and changings and things like that?
Yeah. Look, everyone can give their take on why that thing didn't expand. I never wanted it to, so I don't care. But everyone's got their reason. Even if your reason is not directly tied to OU and Texas, it ends up coming back to OU Texas. This would have happened. We would be there if it weren't for OU Texas. So I guess God bless OU and Texas if you're of my persuasion. But I don't have a better guess than you do, because I don't even think anyone in Birmingham, where the SEC office is, I don't think they know for sure. Like I think those wheels are still moving behind the scenes, and there's so much that a lot of people who went to law school instead of the school we went to have to figure out. So whenever that happens is whenever it happens. But I'll tell you this, I'm going to say used to, for legal reasons. I used to hop freight trains. It's just fun. It's just something I do. It's a felony, whatever. I just do it for fun. But here's the thing about hopping.
Dude, that's the second time you said that on the show, and it's gotten me both times.
Here's the thing. And kids, pull out your notebook, because I'm going to teach you something right quick. I know when you sit at those railroad crossings and you see those trains going by slow, I know they look slow. But here's the thing. Even if they're going 10 miles an hour, you think to yourself, I can run 10 miles an hour. I could hop that thing. Well, on flat ground, well, some of you still couldn't. Let's be real. Let's just be honest with ourselves here. Let's be honest with ourselves. But some of you could. Some of you are athletic. Okay, but you're not running on solid ground. You're running on ballast. That's railroad terminology for rocks. Anyway, I say that to say you grab onto those trains, you realize they're moving a little bit faster than you think they are, even when they're going 10 miles an hour. And that is my long-winded way of telling you, when OU and Texas do arrive, I think you can prepare yourself as much as you possibly could. You know, I think you can read all the trivia books, and you can certainly watch film on opponents. You can go to SEC media days, but man, everybody knows that there's something different. Not about playing a game in the SEC. To me, that's always been the overrated aspect. Like, you can get yourself up. Oklahoma could go to Alabama this year. They may not win, but they could prepare themselves for it. Right. It's not that, man. It's never been that. It's the fact that you go back to South Carolina the next week, and the country would tell you, you know, sports writers will tell you, oh, South Carolina's not even ranked. That may be true, but they got 4 guys on their defensive front that are going to play Sunday ball. And then you come home, and whereas you would have normally had Kansas thrust into your lap, which hadn't always been good news for Texas, you get Mississippi State. Mississippi State, probably not ranked either. But again, they have Sunday players. And here's what you find out in the SEC. Ask A&M about this last year. Just because Mississippi State barely finished above 500, your training room doesn't look any less full the next Sunday morning. Like those bruises, they're not any smaller. The injuries are not any less because your opponent only had 7 wins. And I think that's the big misconception, is the totality, the cumulative effect. I don't think you can prepare for that fully.
Last one, we'll get you out of here because I see a lot of people asking about. You talked about SEC Media Days, so they're firing in there. It's going to be our first SEC Media Days, by the way, and they say #Ask Josh. SEC Media Days will be in Atlanta this year. What is your go-to restaurant in downtown?
Okay, I'm going to give you a pass on this. I will be willing to take one more question only because of how bad this answer is going to be.
Okay.
There is not a human being on this planet that is worse to ask this question to than me. I will literally tell you there's a good Burger King on Exit 7. Like I'm the kind of guy who will tell you, let's go Uber Eats Waffle House. Let's get that delivered to the Omni Hotel. So you may be staying at the Media Hotel. If you are, you want to probably not roll with me when you're around other peers that you want to impress, because I'll just embarrass you. Because I know nothing about the culinary scene. Every time people come to Nashville, they say, hey, man, where do I need to go? Hey, man, give me the hot spots. And I'm sitting there on my phone. Best places to eat in Nashville, the city I live in, I have no clue.
Hey, man, I'm not going to ever turn down a good Whopper. I'm just throwing that out there. I've never turned down a Whopper. If you
now, do you do the real deal Whopper meat, or do you do that newfangled stuff?
No, man, I do the real stuff, man. It's a former collegiate center. If you you got to put a real Whopper in front of me. Look, man, I'll probably eat the other one too. Let's not get it twisted. But look, my wife had it though, and she said it was good. But
I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with my significant other, exploring whatever kind of healthier option they want to. But look, if I go out at 63 years old because I went with the American Whopper over whatever we're going to call that thing, so be it.
I said the same thing. I was like, I don't know what's in that meat, but who cares? It's good. Last one. Is there a sleeper team for you in college football right now that you think that can make some waves maybe that we're not talking about? Mine is honestly, Josh, been Tennessee. I'm really intrigued by Tennessee, especially offensively. But I got to tell you, talking about offensive line, what they did up front defensively I thought was pretty damn impressive too. Who would be your team around college football that you think's a sleeper?
Yeah, so let me throw 3 of them at you. One of them I'm not going to talk about a lot. North Carolina last year was a crushing disappointment for everybody. Right. And if I would have told you in the preseason North Carolina's not going to do anything this year, you would have just said, oh, Sam Howell must be getting hurt, right? Well, he didn't. They just didn't meet expectation. And I remember TCU a couple of times over the last 10 or 15 years. They've been 1 year late to the expectation table. People expect something from them, and they'll disappoint them. So then they'll not predict anything from them, and then they'll pop a 10-win season on you. I'd watch North Carolina because they've been recruiting very well. They've stacked some classes on top of each other. They still got a really good staff up there. But the two that I'm paying attention to, one of them's Michigan State, one of them's Baylor. Michigan State right now, I'm not quite sure that I can put my finger on it. But they've got a lot of that kind of subcurrent feel that Arkansas has, of the sum being greater than the individual parts, so to speak. And they're already doing a lot of stuff up there. They've got an attitude you're not supposed to have at Michigan State.
Right.
Like that's how they would describe them. If you're an Ohio State fan or a Michigan fan or a Penn State fan, Michigan State is supposed to be a nice, scrappy 8-win caliber team that looks good on our resume, but they're supposed to know their role, to steal one of Dwayne Johnson's references. They're supposed to know their role. They're supposed to give us a good, hard-fought game, but we're supposed to win against them. And no one told Michigan State, and Mel Tucker, I mean, every time I look at him, he's on a plane somewhere recruiting. They've got to recruit nationally. They know they have to, but I just think the branding of Michigan State is changing in such a way that Mel Tucker is finding an ability to sell it. And so I would watch them. But look, I was around Dave Aranda last year. You guys have been around him at LSU. I had no idea how sharp that guy was. I knew you don't make it to that level without being sharp. So I knew to some extent about him. But we spent some time with him the weekend they beat Oklahoma. And after they beat Oklahoma, we spent some time with him. And I mean, I'm talking about before he's gone to his press conference. Mm-hmm. And everyone's celebrating. The field got stormed. And he just came out of his locker room and he tells me, that's a problem. That celebration's a problem because it really means we had to lose a game in order to get up for this. And I think I'm probably breaking up a little bit on you. But hey, short answer.
Okay.
My answer is Dave Aranda, Baylor, and Mel Tucker, Michigan State, with a sprinkling of North Carolina.
I love it, my friend. As always, you've been fantastic. I'm sure we'll see and talk to you soon. You can follow Josh at Late Kick Josh, 247 Sports. Go watch his shows. I'm in there religiously. Josh, thank you so much, my friend, for joining us, and we'll talk again soon.
I appreciate you, brother.
That's our good friend Josh Pate from 247 Sports. Dude just kills it, man. And look, I hope he just gives me a job when he's a new commissioner of college football.